Hey everyone, good to have you here. A quick reminder before we get started, the following is intended for educational purposes only and should not be considered trading advice. What if you could learn about classic trend following not from a book, not from a course, but firsthand as one of the original turtle traders discusses the principles that shaped the iconic turtle experiment and decades of trend following? Well, now you can. Hey everyone, I'm Ben Lichtenstein. After years of calling markets from the trading floor and hosting shows on the Schwab Network, I decided to pursue a long-term passion of mine to trade full-time. Didn't take long to realize my approach to identifying trends and positioning with them was too discretionary. I needed something more rules-based. So I reached out to Jerry Parker. Jerry's one of the original turtle traders, the GOAT when it comes to trend following, and he's a direct link to one of the most iconic trading experiments ever. Jerry agreed to sit down and discuss classic trend following and how he's benefited from implementing a strict rules-based systematic trading approach. Follow along as we talk about the importance of cutting losses short while at the same time letting winners run. Join me in what I'm calling a modern-day version of the iconic 1983 turtle experiment. It's a tribute to Richard Dennis and Bill Eckhart and their timeless trend-following principles. Ladies and gentlemen, tighten your chin straps, fasten your seatbelts, and please keep your hands inside the vehicle until we come to a full and complete stop, because it's time for Trendin' Turtle. So I want to get started right away. I've been describing this episode to my friends and to my family members throughout the production process as a triple confluence of events. It's really three major components coming together as one. In this case, it's a legend, a dream, and a whole lot of hard work. Without further delay, let's bring in Jerry Parker, the legend component of this confluence. Legendary in that he's one of the original turtle traders. Jerry's a direct link to one of the most successful trading experiments ever. He's been building on those original trend-following concepts and strategies for the last 40-plus years, and he's here with us today. Jerry, we're here. We finally made it.
Yes, it's about time, I think. We've been putting in a lot of work, a lot of talking, and a lot of getting together and meeting, and looking forward to our adventure together.
We have been, and I like the fact that you used the word work there, because we're going to talk about that later in terms of being one of those three components that are coming together here, hard work and the two of us, years and years of experience in markets. When I think of it, like 70 years combined, I think this is really something a lot of people are going to benefit from, and there's going to be a lot to be had here. Hopefully we'll inspire and entertain as well. Jerry, before we get started talking about what it takes to become a modern-day turtle trader, let's take a few minutes to look back. I know you've probably done this 100 times, but take us back to the fall of 1983, where the story begins. Tell us how you first came to know Richard Dennis and Bill Eckhart, and the story behind how you became one of the original turtle traders.
Yes, it's quite a momentous time in my life. Obviously, I was working in public accounting in Richmond, Virginia, and I was learning about trend following just by reading books or watching traders on TV. Wall Street Week, Marty Zweig was one of my early mentors, let's say, and I actually had a chance of meeting him years later. So I was falling in love with trend following without knowing anything about Richard Dennis or what was going to become the Turtle program. I did read an article about Richard Dennis in a magazine, and so I knew that when I saw the ad in the Wall Street Journal that they placed to hire the traders and teach them how to trade and provide them with money to trade, I knew that it was a legitimate situation, and because I'd read about Richard Dennis before, but I didn't know it was trend following. I didn't know what to expect, so I just replied to the ad and sent my resume in, and let's say 1,000 people applied, I think, and they sent a test out, a true-false test to everyone, 100 true-false questions, and I carried that test around quite a while before I had to send it back in, and I just thought it might be trend following. I wasn't 100% sure how to answer the questions, but I sort of thought, yeah, maybe it is, and I'll just go with that philosophy, and I ended up getting an interview and getting hired, and moved to Chicago with my 2 suitcases. I sold my microwave and my car And I told my roommate goodbye and took my 2 suitcases to Chicago, and the experience began.
So you answer ad in the paper. You receive a questionnaire, which you true false questionnaire. I think, as far as I remember, there were some questions that asked for a 1-sentence response, if I'm correct.
There was also 5 discussion questions, but no more than 1 sentence each. And that whole idea was part of the Turtle program, where we would be asked to respond to a certain question every now and then. Very infrequently, they'd say, okay, we have a question, 1 sentence only. So that's pretty interesting. I understand that now. I would do the same thing.
Probably really understand it after working with me for a while now. You know how wordy I can be at times. I always joke around and say how my father used to say that I was vaccinated with phonograph needles. So definitely, I like the sound of my own voice. I do need to trim it down a little bit. Jerry, in the past, we talked about how smart Richard and Bill were, right? How kind Richard was, how supportive of you and the other turtles they were. And in many ways, I feel like that's the story, or that's a big part of the story that gets lost.
Sure. I think they were just super intelligent people. We thought we were smart. They hired 12 people the first year, thereabouts. We thought we were like really smart people, and then we would have meetings with them. After the Turtle class, like about 2 weeks of Turtle training in December of '83, we would still have infrequent sessions with Rich or Bill to go over new system changes, or to encourage us during periods of losing money, let's say. But and then once you spent some time with them, you're like, oh yeah, this is another class of human brain. We're not. This is a much different type of people. So they were really incredibly smart, and they gave us all the tools we needed, not just to trade for them for a few years, but to build a career. It wasn't, here are the rules. They're going to be good for a while. They said, no, these rules, you'll have to evolve and change and learn and do more research and back testing, but stick with these broad principles. And that's what I've done over all these years, stuck with the broad principles and stuck with trend following.
Yeah, and you did, and you evolved. And as you mentioned, you built on that. Couple things to add to that. It just reminds me of a quick story. When I was sitting in your office one time, we were messing around with one of the spreadsheets and the Excel program. And I remember thinking to myself, man, Jerry knows all these formulas. And I'm like, look at the way it's just moving around. So I was like, I've got to do some work on my Excel, so kind of polish up on that, for one. But for two, I remembered that story where I'm sitting here thinking about how smart Jerry is, in terms of the trading, the Excel, and some of the other, things we had talked about. And then I remembered that story, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, if Bill and Richard were two of the smartest people Jerry's ever met, and Jerry's one of the smartest people that I've ever met, then these guys must have been flipping geniuses. I mean, I can't even imagine how smart they were. And the other thing it makes me think of is, I can remember walking around, University of Chicago campus, and Bill Eckhart, there's a research center, as far as I know, the building where my mom, one of the positions that she held, her office was in that Bill Eckhart Research Center on 57th Street there. I think it's on University or 57th University, as far as I remember, in Hyde Park. So anyways, it also makes me think of a story you once told me, Jerry, about how soon after getting brought on as one of the turtles into the program, that fall of '83, it sounded like there was a Christmas party that you guys went to in January, and Richard Dennis came up, and I'll let you tell the story or finish it, but basically you told this story about how Richard came up to you and asked you if you hadn't gotten picked for the program, what were you going to do? And your answer was?
I don't remember.
Well, you had told me, you said kind of in maybe a little bit of an overconfident way, you said something along the lines of, hey, I was going to be a great trader anyway. Whether you brought me on in the program, you were so determined at the time to just to push forward and maybe a little bit overconfident, you said.
Yeah, no, that was, they asked me that in the interview. And I said, I will be a trader with or without you, or something like that. So I cringe now, because that's kind of probably not true, for one thing, and a little over the top, let's say. My head was full of so much information as I walked down from the hotel to the Board of Trade. Mm-hmm. And of course, in the interview, I didn't use probably any of that information.
Mm-hmm. Overprepared.
Yeah, and then at the
Yeah.
Christmas party, he said, "That's the reason we hired you, because you had
Hmm.
that confidence."
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I was like, "Oh, well, it's kind of
Hmm.
embarrassing, but thank you."
Hmm.
And, I think, if you stick to the principles and just keep repeating, and try not to think you know a lot, too much, and understand there's not that much you need to know outside of
Hmm.
the broad principles of trend following and the rules about trading and trend following and putting systems together and all the rules they taught us. If you just stay in that lane and don't get out of that, you can come across as smarter than you really are. I'm good at repeating whatever Rich and Bill taught us, and I am pretty good at sticking with those rules. Not perfect, but gotten better over the years. But I was a slow starter.
So, I've heard the experiment you took part in described as a nature versus nurture, basically an attempt to answer that age-old question, can trading be taught or are good traders born that way? And I mean, what do you think? Can traders be taught, Jerry?
Well, I mean, I think if you're going to go into a situation we were in where it's systematic trading based
Hmm.
upon rules that have been back tested, all you have to be taught, all you have to do is just follow the rules. So you
Hmm.
can be trained to follow the rules. If you're asked to improve upon the rules, do your own back testing, that may be more difficult. But trading a certain set of rules was teachable. It just depended upon if people were going to follow those rules. I don't think they were too difficult to follow or understand. I think one of my goals was to understand them deeply. That's been fun to do that, but I'm not sure if it was even necessary to be successful when you're given on a platter, here's how you should trade.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think, but you could take the smartest people, the most capable people, and if they're not really able to or desire to follow the rules, a lot of people
Hmm.
want to change the rules and make them
Hmm.
better, and then they kind of be careful trying to make them better when you're giving the rules from two of the smartest people you've ever met before. So you got to use your creativity, especially when you're out on your own, when there's no one there. You got to leave those guys behind and create your own business, but you got to be careful. And a lot of the trouble I've gotten into over the years is being, you know, too different than what we were taught. I sort of violated some of the broad principles.
All right, so you get your suitcases, you're picked for the program, you move to Chicago. You're starting out with the program, learning the system, learning what's expected of you, basically, sticking with the trade, sticking with the system, taking every trade, treating every trade the same. I actually remember a story too, talking about the move to Chicago, something about you looking at this apartment. I think it was on Lakeshore Drive, like overlooking the park, the lake, as far as I remember. And you said it was something like $900 a month. Weren't even really sure if that was a good deal, but you loved it. It felt right to you. So you took the apartment. But I got the impression, Jerry, at that point, entering into this program, you and probably many of the other turtles at the time, you must have felt like you were on top of the world.
For sure. I mean, we were definitely intellectually, we were expanding our minds and getting
Hmm.
information that we had no right to ever expect. Markets opened at 7:30 and closed at 2:10. That was nice in a big city with lots of fun things to do and sports. I was really into professional sports and, watching the baseball and football and basketball and hockey. Um, and then making money and watching the markets, and what a great job that is to have a front seat, uh, watching the currencies, the commodities, the bonds, and the stocks every day. And then we had a great group of people in the office. It was a lot of fun. We had a ping pong table. We played computer baseball. We had lunch together, dinners together. And over the years, we became really good friends.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
But I would walk up and down the hallway and like go down to get Nestle's Crunch with Liz Cheval. And I would pass my colleagues in the hallway, and I would say, like, this is the greatest job of all time. We all hit the lottery, and they'd say, yeah, yeah. But it was, and we realized it at the time. It just could not be better. Rich was great. He was fantastic, smart, loved sports. He included us in his parties. Yeah, I would have stayed there forever and never left if they would have wanted to keep it going. We were incredibly loyal and wanted just to make Rich happy.
It's funny that you say hit the lottery because I was going to say I often think of the opportunity that Rich and Bill offered you guys as well. For you, this was almost like a golden ticket moment, Jerry. You must have felt like Charlie Bucket, right, and Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. I mean, but as you mentioned, it wasn't just kind of everything handed to you on the platter, right? They entrusted you, they were teaching you, but you guys had to put the work in, right? And then again, to further this and to evolve into what you've built today, I mean, that took a lot of hard work.
It's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. The trading is stressful and
Mhm.
weighs on your human desires to do the opposite of what's successful in trading, take small profits. And uh, yeah, so it was, but it was all fun. And if I didn't enjoy it every day,
Mm.
I
Hmm.
probably wouldn't still be doing it.
I like that. I like that. I kind of feel the same way about my time on the trading floor and and my personal trading. Definitely stressful at times, that's for sure. But on the whole, loving every minute of it. Jerry, I remember you talking about how all you wanted to do was impress Richard, right? And how really all that took, in some ways, it was easy. It just meant taking the trades. It meant following the rules. Kind of simple. Just trust the system. But from what you've been telling me, sometimes that's easier said than done.
Well, initially, right out of the gate, we were losing money, lots of money. And so that was difficult. It weighs on you. And at one point, Rich came in the spring and said, one sentence, given these losses, should we take all the money away? Should we give you more money, or should we leave things the same? And we were like, well, I think we're doing what you wanted us to do,
Hmm.
and we're just losing money. And he was like, yeah, that's right. And so he gave people more money, and that was kind of the low point. And then things kind of took off in that 1984 from there. So it was a really great environment. Do the right thing, do the hard thing, follow the rules. If you make money and you don't follow the rules, you will get in trouble. If you lose money by following the rules, just don't worry about it. And so it's really a great way to start and and then kind of when you trade money for real clients, they
Very
don't
different.
have that attitude.
Yeah.
They're short term, and if you can cheat the system and make money, they'll be totally fine with it. But over the long run, of course, um, not following the rules will end up causing you to make less money.
Just talking about how that's not a normal circumstance in terms of investors wouldn't necessarily do that. That's kind of when they get scared and if anything start to pull back some of their assets. But also that's one of the unique aspects, kind of what you were talking about in terms of being involved with Bill and Richard, right? And the nurture aspect of what they were bringing to the experiment.
That's right. Um, they were encouraging, but Rich wouldn't put up with people complaining about the markets and complaining that they couldn't do the trades. That he would not put up with that. And why should he? It was really a sink or swim situation. But they were more tolerant. Um, and like I said, the most important thing initially is to always just do the trades and follow the system, put the trades on. After the first month or few weeks, maybe it's the first week. Yeah. We were all in this one office, and and Rich said he was going to call each one of us. So you could just see the phones ringing around the room for these short phone conversations. And finally my phone rang, and Rich was like, how's it going? I'm like, I think it's going well. He goes, how many trades did you do this week? And I said, 5. And he goes, how many do you think you should have done? I said, probably like 15. And his response was, yeah, that's right. Just don't worry about it. Just do the trades. It's not a big deal. So he was really trying to help us out and let us, but and then I'd say the very first big turtle trade, Fab Heating Oil, 1984, many people in the room missed it. It was a big trend right off the bat. Probably at least half the room missed the trade. Maybe my memory's not so good. I know I missed the trade.
Hmm.
So how do you do that? How is this even possible? Because that's the one thing you're told. follow the rules. And the most important thing for a trend follower is don't miss the big trends. 1 out of 10 trades is going to be a big winner for you. And if you miss a trade, undoubtedly it's going to be one of the big ones. So it was a good learning lesson right off the bat. This is what can happen if you don't take the trades, and then you got to let the profits run. Then you got to take small losses. It's all the very common sense strategy that people have heard for a million years, and it's very difficult to do.
Easier said than done, as I was saying before. We're going to talk a lot about those strategies that Jerry just mentioned, but a couple things here, Jerry, real quick. It solidifies for me this idea, and I think I talked to you about this one time, this idea that was communicated to me years ago. I mean, I'm talking 20 years ago on the trading floor. This guy once said to me, good people attract good people in this business. And so this brings up another real quick story. The guy who got me involved in the business, got me my first job on the trading floor, his name was Steve. And he was a character, a trader, plus a lot of other things, but just a character in general. And he was my neighbor, but also the father of 2 of my best friends growing up in high school. So Steve, when he first got me my first job on the trading floor, he handed me a stack of books, basically. And he was like, look, these are the books that you want to read. If you're going to, he had time on the trading floor. He had friends that were members in the pits while I was a runner and stuff like that. And so he's like, these are the books that you want to read. And so I read all these books, in the beginning, and get all, I'm gung-ho about the whole thing. I knew that this was for me, and I was going to dedicate, my life to it, basically. So again, good people attract good people. And so I'm sitting in your office one time in Tampa, and I'm nervous. I'm like, we're sitting in your living room, I think it was, and we're having this chat, and I'm nervous because I'm thinking to myself, oh man, Jerry at some point is going to be like, hey, did you read this book? Did you read this book? Have you read this? Have you seen this webinar? You had just come back from I think it was a conference in Sweden at the time. And so I was feeling like I should have gotten a little bit more up to speed prior to having this conversation. And so here we are in the living room, and I start, kind of feeling the sweat beat up on my brow a little bit. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be where Jerry's going to ask me like about these books that I should have read, and all of a sudden, at one point, you start talking books and you go, well, there's this book, and you said, Fooled by Randomness. And I don't know if you remember this conversation, but literally, I like jumped out of my seat. I was like, Fooled by Randomness. I read that book. I read that book. So here I was, very nervous, very scared about what Jerry was going to, and what would be presented to me, and my level of expertise versus his, and my experience versus his. But this book that Steve, again, Good People Attracting Good People, this book that Steve had given me years ago was like the first book that you mentioned to me. So it calmed me down so much. And it was like just a reminder that I was meant to be there at the time, and not to feel too, stressed out, to let things be what they were. I am who I am. And I think that's a big part of why we're here together. So while the turtle story in itself is legendary in many ways, and in my opinion, what's equally as legendary is how you went on to become one of, if not the most iconic trend followers of all time. Jerry, one of the topics we're going to cover is how over the last 40 years, some of the original turtle strategies have changed. We'll get into why, but also how you're living proof that the core principles have held up astonishingly well.
Well, I agree. I mean, only because we stuck to the principles and made very small parameter changes, but the core tenets of trend following, letting profits run, taking small losses, still works. But I think it's crucial to understand the basics and the principles, and try not to over-engineer a smooth trading strategy where you don't suffer. When your focus is truly on minimizing the ups and downs and the lumpiness of your equity curve. So I think that's what I was good at, and I was chastised just a few times of straying from the principles, and my response each time was to get right back to following them. So that's going to happen probably to everybody. Just going to stray a little bit too far, and then come back and see the benefits of following a more strict systematic approach.
Yeah, you've told me before, when you use things other than trend to identify entry and exit positions, you leave a lot on the table, you said. You talk about how you can when you use things other than trend to get in and out.
I think so. Yes, I think that's an unfortunate evolution in the CTA business today. It's become less trend following
Hmm.
and
We're
more.
going to talk about
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that in a minute, but let's try and get back on track here. It's so funny because as we were preparing for this, Jerry, you told me I would be the one that needs to keep you on track, and here I find that I'm the one. You're probably going to end up being the one that needs to keep me on track. Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry's a legend in this confluence, this trifecta I've been talking about. Let's talk a little bit about the dream component real quick. That's me, because reaching out to Jerry to do this project on this level, it was his dream of mine. It had been a dream of mine for a real long time. But I was scared to ask Jerry, and this kind of ties into a funny story about my grandmother. As a kid, I would go to my grandmother's house, Jerry. I might have told you this. And I'd be there after schools and on weekends. I would always go into her kitchen, and on her kitchen counter, she would have this jar of candy. And butterscotch and all the mixed candy in this jar with a little latch on it. And I would stand in front of the jar and I would look at it, and she'd kind of just sort of work our way in the kitchen. And then she knew what was happening every single time, and she would play it the same way. And she'd go, "So what are you looking at?" And I'd be like, "Well, nothing," and sheepishly avoid actually answering the question that she was asking. And, after 2 or 3 questions, basically, she would say to me, and I remember her saying it every single time, she'd say to me, "Hey, Ben, in life, if you don't ask for it, you're never going to get it." So about a year ago, tying this all back to how we ended up here, I remember hearing a webinar that Jerry was doing. I can't remember with who at the time, but Jerry, you were talking in this webinar where you were talking about how to become a successful trader. You said something like you have to do the thing that you don't normally do. So at that point, I was like, you know what? For years, I'd been wanting to approach you, wanted to discuss doing a project like this or something along these lines. And again, a little too cautious, a little too sheepish about doing so. But having heard you said that, I was like, you know what? Throwing caution to the wind. I wrote this email out, drafted up an email, sent it to you, basically doing something that I wouldn't normally do. And I asked Jerry, I simply put, I was like, "Hey, do you want to be part of this project?" Hit the send button. And a few days later, Jerry replied. And well, Jerry, here we are. So you obviously said yes.
Selfishly, yes.
I appreciate that. That's
You're a good
great.
interviewer, and I think it's be beneficial for traders and investors alike to hear more about how trend following works and how it works from my point of view and the turtle's point of view. It could be much different than it's practiced much differently from firm to firm. So we don't want the original turtle trading ideas to be lost and the philosophy to be lost. That's the most important thing. The market's going to change, parameters are going to change. It matters less how you identify trends or exit trends, but some of the underlying philosophies of how to build systems and what to look for when you're trading or when you're going to invest in trend following funds is very important for people to understand.
So, all right, sounds like this is where that hard work's going to come into play. So I've always said I've never been one to shy away from hard work, Jerry. So let's get started.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
All right, sticking with this concept of the 3 components coming together, that's the legend, the dream, and the hard work, where we ended our last segment, I wanted to focus a little bit more on the hard work component because, Jerry, I feel like that's where the transformation really happens. I remember you saying something once that stuck with me. You said you should try to make your system psychologically hard. I've heard you say trading is hard. It should be hard. You've said seek out ways to make yourself uncomfortable. You talked about how the whole pursuit of smoothness is wrong-headed. You said do the thing you don't usually want to do, right? I sent that email. And Jerry, you talked about, well, how, as you put it, that's the true path to evolving and becoming a successful trader.
Yes, I think on a daily basis, you should have that mentality and that thought process where you're not here to desire things to be easy. The ups and downs of the markets are normal. And following the system is how you grade yourself, not how much money you've made over a day or a week or a month or whatever. Do you like the system still? Is the back test still good? If so, then your only job is to do those trades the way you're supposed to, um, and suffer along with the ups and downs if you want to, or try to learn how to make it more of an intellectual game that you're following and you're applying those rules. And it's nothing personal. I've taken it personally sometimes. I'm not as good as other people. I hate losing money. My clients are mad. You've got to put all that stuff behind you and do the right thing. And that's going to be, the right thing is usually going to be something that's hard that other people are not going to find easy to do. And then you're going to come across people who are trying to make things easier and better, and easier for the client to hold the trade. I think that's one thing that makes trend following kind of universally applicable, and something that's going to last for a long time, is that the proper way to practice it is not searching out ease, comfort, and pleasure, but understanding that drawdowns and sell-offs and losing money is just part of the game, and just having the confidence in your system to keep doing it. It just takes experience, and it takes not doing those things to teach you a lesson that you've got to do those things.
You need to touch the fire and get burnt once or twice, sort of, it sounds like, to actually realize. But okay, so I like that ease, comfort, and pleasure are some things that we should avoid and focus more on, as you've put it in the past, staying in the trend and not giving too much back.
That's right. But you're going to give too much back sometimes by following the system. The system, it looks at all of the data, decades of data, thousands of trades. And all it says is, well, if you did this trade on all those markets over all those years, you would have a good outcome. But you can definitely find many trades in that sample that did not work out well, that gave back too much profit, more profit than you were comfortable. But I don't think you can outperform your strategy. That's a big something to really think about. You can't outperform your rules over the long term. You may get lucky, but you won't outperform them. Your discretionary trades make less money.
One of my visits to sit down with Jerry went to see the Tampa Bay Lightning play, and this is a story I've brought up a couple times. I think it kind of feeds into this, treating every trade the same and not adjusting and tweaking your parameters based on, as you just mentioned, one individual trade or too narrow of a time frame of sample size. And at the hockey game, the goalie had a few goals scored on him late in the game, but a few goals, quickly in succession, and you could tell he was upset. He was bummed out and frustrated, but he did everything the same. I talked to Jerry at the time about it. It sort of reminded me of baseball players stepping up to the plate, and the way they tighten up their batting gloves and the way they rub their feet in the dirt and kind of get their selves in position. I mean, it's this sort of almost ritualistic, almost obsessive sort of OCD type behavior that has worked for them. And they're able to repeat it every single time consistently on a regular basis. And they know that over the long term, those results are going to be favorable. But yes, as you just mentioned, Jerry, there's going to be times where you're going to get 3 goals scored against you, unfortunately, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you got to, go over to the bench and change your pads up or get a different hockey stick or change your face mask, right? I mean, you're going to still do everything the same way.
I think that's the key for people who are successful in life, to evolve, to change over time, but to also realize that the reason that they're not enjoying the current performance has nothing to do with tweaking their rules and their strategy. And it's a fine line to walk. But I think I've made both mistakes, not evolving fast enough and then evolving too quickly. And I think you need to be careful. The system you give up today, the parameters you change today may end up being the better parameters going forward. We can't predict the future. It's all based upon a large sample size of historical trades.
All right, I like that. I mean, and again, this hard work, all of this is really why we're here today, and what we're doing, and we hope that our listeners, our viewers, are able to participate in and do with us here as well. So that's why we're here. That's why this experiment matters, and why the podcast exists. We're going to show what real discipline looks like in today's markets. We're going to educate, inspire, entertain. We're documenting the work, the rules, and what's required of us to become classic trend followers. So in season 1 and the episodes to come, in addition to identifying existing market trends, we're going to get into the weeds on topics like taking every trade and why that's essential, why you should learn to love your trading system, one of my favorites that Jerry always talks about. We're going to get into the importance of back testing and avoiding overfitting or over optimization. Jerry, before we get further into what we're going to be covering in the months ahead, another reason why we're here is because you've got a bone to pick. We're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about how the basics of trend following and how those classic strategies are being eroded over time. You mentioned how CTAs are adding too many bells, too many whistles, looking to smooth out some of those returns.
Yes, I don't want them to change. I would like to be the only one who doesn't do that. That's totally fine. But it's really just an educational thing where people need to understand when they make these choices, if they're going to trade themselves or if they're going to invest in CTAs, need to know what they're getting into and the difference between more of a classic approach. Trad trend is a new term I've come up with. Trad trend. What that is, how that differs from more of a managed futures CTA approach that doesn't let profits run. So one of the core tenets of trend following is being changed because the markets are too volatile or too bumpy, and the profits are to minimize drawdowns. But the problem with minimizing drawdowns in this way is you minimize the profits, you reduce the profits as well.
So is that going to replace the managed futures and mismanaged futures?
I don't know if it's going to replace it or not. I doubt it. Because if you approach clients with a shortcut, you can get what you want and not suffer the pain, and there is no cost in not following the classical trend following rules, then they'll love that. Yes, please give that to me. Jerry wants me to eat too much broccoli. He's always telling me to eat my broccoli. And so, yes, of course, that's going to be the more popular option. But I think over time, sticking with the traditional trend approach of letting profits run and taking small losses and holding on to those trades, even though they're volatile and there's been a drawdown, I think is going to end up being a better approach over time.
Jerry, two topics that are very near and dear to your heart, the importance of diversification and outliers.
Yes, very important. And two things we do really well, and two things that are essential for increase your odds of success in trend following.
Yes, along the way, I'll be trading my real account, real rules, real mistakes, real lessons in real time. And Jerry, you'll be there to keep me on track and explain why the rules matter most, especially when they're hardest to follow.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to you losing money right along with me, or maybe outperforming me. Who knows? I won't be jealous. I promise.
Well, I want to take a second here before we say goodbye, Jerry, to thank you for your time, your commitment, your passion for this project. Jerry, if you have anything that you wanted to mention that I didn't cue you or tee you up on, definitely feel free at this point. But other than that, let's just sign off and promise our viewers another episode in a few weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to our project together.
Me too, that's for sure. And everyone out there, ladies and gentlemen, that's where this journey begins. A legend to learn from, a dream finally put into motion, and the kind of hard work that turns rules into results. This is the path, this is the process, this is us becoming a modern-day turtle trader. This is Trend and Turtle.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Trend and Turtle. If you want more information on trend following, head on over to trendandturtle.com, become a subscriber for weekly updates, and to be first to know when new episodes drop. And don't forget, this podcast is intended for educational purposes only and should not be considered trading advice.